All right, so let me ask you a quick question, right? Have you ever been scrolling through social media and all you see is somebody taking another vacation, buying a brand new car, or moving into a brand new house, or just celebrating some type of financial milestone? And after seeing enough of these posts, you start wondering yourself if you're somehow falling behind financially. But the truth is that social media has a very funny way of making us compare our everyday lives to somebody else's highlight reel. And because of that, a lot of people feel like they're falling behind financially when in reality, they're making a lot more progress than they actually realize. I spent years studying personal finance, investing, and I worked in the financial industry for over 2 years. And one thing that I learned during that time is that a lot of people are often much harder on themselves than they actually need to be. So in today's video, I want to walk through 7 signs that you're doing well financially, even if it doesn't always feel like it. What's up, y'all? My name is Ruben, and this is Eternal Assets, where I'll talk any and everything financial literacy. So let's jump right into the video. So the first sign that you're doing well financially is that you built up an emergency fund that can cover somewhere between 3 and 6 months of essential living expenses, preferably sitting in a high yield savings account. Now, if you've already reached that point, then give yourself some credit because you're actually doing better than a lot of people realize. A recent study by Bankrate showed that only 47% of Americans have enough cash readily available to access to cover a $1,000 emergency expense. So, in other words, almost half of Americans would struggle if life threw them an unexpected bill starting tomorrow. And that is exactly why an emergency fund is so important. Life just happens. Cars break down, medical bills pile up and show up unexpectedly, water heaters fail, tires go flat. And when things like these happen, having some money set aside can make a huge difference between having a temporary inconvenience and going extremely far into some debt. If you're watching this video and you already have that emergency fund in place, don't overlook it because it is a pretty good accomplishment and it's a pretty big milestone. And it puts you in a much stronger financial position than many people realize. And if you haven't reached that point just yet, don't get discouraged at all because this isn't meant to make you feel like you're behind. Instead, it's meant to give you something to work towards. Every single emergency fund starts with that first dollar that you save up, and it's never too late to begin starting to build that financial cushion. A second sign that you're doing well financially is that you're consistently living below your means, or in other words, you're spending less money than you're bringing in. It sounds pretty simple, but it's one of the most important financial habits that you actually can develop over time. Here's the reality, right? And that's that it doesn't matter if you're somebody who's making $50,000 a year or if you're making $150,000 a year. If you're spending everything that you earn, or even worse, you're spending more than you actually earn, you're eventually going to run into some type of financial problems at some point. On the other hand, if you're somebody who's a bit more modest with your income and you're consistently spending less than you actually make, you're building a much stronger financial foundation. Living below your means does not mean that you can never enjoy life, and it definitely doesn't mean that you have to say no to every dinner, vacation, or every single purchase. But instead, it simply means that you're very intentional about how you spend your money. You're making sure that at the end of every month, there's still something left over to save or invest, or put towards other financial goals that you may actually have. One of the biggest mistakes that I've seen so many people make over the years is that they increase their lifestyle every single time that their income goes up. So they get a raise, so they go get a more expensive car. They get a better paying job, so they move into a more expensive apartment. And then before you know it, they're making more money than ever, but they somehow still feel broke at the end of every single month. So if instead you're able to avoid this financial trap and consistently spend less than you earn every single month, you're setting yourself up for long-term financial success. That extra money can go towards a bunch of other things, like building an emergency fund that we just talked about, investing for retirement, paying off debt, or reaching whatever financial goals that you may have set for yourself. So if you are one of those people who have developed the habit of living below your means consistently, then don't underestimate just how valuable that skill is. It's one of those habits that isn't always exciting, but over time, it can completely change your financial future. All right, so the next sign is that you don't carry large credit card balances from month to month. Now, I want to be clear, right? And I'm not saying that you should never use credit cards. In fact, I use credit cards all the time myself. The key difference is how you actually use them instead. A lot of people think that having a credit card automatically means that you're in debt, when that's not necessarily true. Credit cards are simply a great financial tool if you use them the right way. When they're used responsibly, they can help you build credit, earn rewards, provide extra consumer protections, but if you're mismanaging them, then it can quickly become one of the most expensive forms of debt that you can have. If you're paying off your balance consistently and avoiding high interest debt, then that's really a good sign. It shows that you're living within your means and not relying on credit cards to cover your everyday expenses. And you're staying in control of your finances instead of letting your finances control you. Now, does that mean you have to pay your credit card off every single day? Well, not necessarily. As I talked about in one of my recent credit card videos, there's a big difference between carrying a balance and simply using your credit card throughout the month. carrying a balance means that you're paying interest because you didn't pay off your credit card statement balance in full. So if you are somebody who uses credit cards responsibly, you pay them off consistently, and you aren't carrying large balances every single month, carrying over that high interest debt, that's a habit that can save you hundreds and if not thousands of dollars in interest over time. So another sign you're making real financial progress is that you don't really feel the need to show everyone how much money you make or how much you can afford. Instead, you're focused on quietly building your wealth behind the scenes. Back when I was working in financial services, one of the things that I noticed about some of the wealthiest people that I would come across is that they usually weren't the ones that were trying their hardest to look a certain way or look like they were wealthy. In fact, many of them lived surprisingly modest lifestyles, and they understood that real wealth isn't built by impressing strangers. What it really is about is creating financial freedom for both yourself and your family. Now, that's not to say that there's anything wrong with buying a nice car or taking a vacation every once in a while or just celebrating some of your accomplishments. If you've worked really hard for those things and you genuinely can afford them while still living below your means like we discussed earlier, then you have every single right to actually enjoy them, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The key difference is your motivation behind all of those purchases. Are you making them because you truly want it, or is it deep down really just because you want to convince others that you're successful? One of the biggest mindset shifts that I can say I've made over the years is realizing that not everything needs to be posted online or shown to everybody that you actually purchased it. Sometimes the smartest financial decisions are the ones that nobody actually ever sees. That might be making an extra investment, building your emergency fund just a little bit more, or paying off some high interest debt that you currently have. Things like these aren't always the most exciting things to go tell your friends or to post on Instagram for everybody to see, but those kinds of decisions are the ones that really make real wealth over time. So if you're more focused on building your financial future rather than broadcasting your financial lifestyle online, then I think that's a really good sign that you're making some real good financial progress. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather actually be wealthy than simply look the part online to all of my friends or on social media. Here's another good sign that often gets overlooked, and that's that if you're consistently investing in your retirement, then that's a huge sign that you're doing well financially. Whether that's through an IRA that you opened individually on your own or through your 401k that you have with your job, the important thing is that you're thinking beyond today and preparing for your financial future. By far, one of the biggest advantages that you have as an investor is time. The earlier that you begin investing for your retirement, then that means the more time that your money has to actually grow with compound interest. That's why even small contributions made consistently over the course of a few years can turn into something much more significant down the road. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to max out your retirement account each and every single year. The amount matters much less than the actual habit of just consistently investing in retirement. Even if you're only able to invest a small amount each month, you're still building consistency, and consistency is what creates long-term results. If you are regularly contributing to a Roth IRA or 401k or another retirement account that you may have, don't overlook that, because your future self is going to really be glad that you made that decision. Now, this next one is pretty similar to the last point, but there is a very important difference. While the last one was specifically talking about investing for retirement, this next one is talking about consistently investing in the market as a whole over time. Now, when I say investing, I'm not talking about trying to find the next hot stock that everybody's talking about or whichever company that everybody on social media has been talking about over the past week. Personally, I've been investing for the past 4 years now, and one thing I've learned is that building wealth is usually a lot more boring than many people expect. And that actually is a really good thing. I really like investing in broad market ETFs because they allow me to own hundreds of different companies and stocks within just one single investment, instead of trying to guess which individual stocks are going to outperform the others. Building wealth through investing in the market usually isn't about trying to chase the next big thing, but instead it's about continuing to invest, staying patient through the market's ups and downs, and giving your money some time to actually grow. That's one of the reasons why I talk so much about ETFs on this channel, because they're simple, they're diversified, and for long-term investors and the majority of beginners out there, they're a great place to start. So if you're investing month after month and you're thinking in terms of years instead of weeks or even days, it may not feel exciting each and every single day, but it's one of the strongest habits that you can build for your financial future. And finally, the last sign that you're doing pretty well financially is that you created enough room in your finances to be generous from time to time. Now, I want to be honest about something, and that's that being generous is not always easy, no matter how much money you make at that. Because the moment you start thinking about giving money away is also naturally when you start thinking about all the other things that you can do with that money instead of giving it away. You can invest it, you can save it, you can put it towards a vacation, or you could buy something that you've been wanting for a long time with it. And listen, trust me, that's a completely normal thought process to actually have. But when you have a healthy financial foundation, you create room to think just beyond yourself. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to look like you're donating thousands of dollars to a charity every year, because maybe it's simply buying lunch for a friend every once in a while, helping a family member through a difficult season that they're having financially, or just giving to your local church. It can look many different ways to many different people. One thing that I've learned throughout the years is that generosity becomes a lot easier when your finances are actually healthy. When you constantly are stressed out about paying bills or making ends meet every single month, it's a lot more difficult to think about actually helping somebody else when you yourself could use some help. But if throughout the year you're pretty responsible with your own finances, then that does give you the opportunity to bless other people from time to time, because on your own you're pretty responsible yourself. To me, that's one of the most rewarding parts about building wealth. Yes, it is great to have financial security. Yes, it is great to invest and prepare for retirement, but it also is incredibly rewarding when you're in a position where you can help somebody else out or just make somebody's day a little bit better. So those are 7 signs that you're doing pretty well financially, even though it might not always feel like it. If you find yourself checking off a few of these things that we talked about today, then take a moment to recognize the progress that you actually have made. You don't have to have every single thing on this list, but even if you just have a few of them, then that should be a sign that you actually are being smarter with your money than you actually might think. And listen, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, because it really does help out the channel. And if you want more videos on budgeting, investing, credit cards, or just overall financial literacy, consider subscribing as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.